Hello, everyone. I'm Christine Stevens, and I'm excited to introduce our special guest, Bodhi. He's a musician, producer, and sound healer. In fact, his CD last year, Deep Dream, was the #1 flute album on the International New Age Music Chart in December. What an accomplishment. He hails from Mount Shasta. And with a deep love of the natural world, he's developed his own unique style of flute improvisation for healing music. He has studied with Tito La Rosa, Paul Horn, and Alauddin Matthew, and is currently creating a sound healing yurt. How wonderful. He continues to add other instruments to his sound healing orchestra, like the ocarina, chirango, and crystal chimes, honoring different traditions from around the world. And I just want to say, in introducing Bodhi, before I met him, I heard his music 7 years ago when I was on a personal silent retreat, and they were playing his music, and I found out how beautiful your flute music is. It supported my experience in an inward journey, later finding you live. So please welcome, and I want to welcome you, Bodhi.
Thank you, Christine. It's an honor to be here, and thanks to the Shift Network, it's an honor to meet you. I've been following your work for quite some time, and it's an honor to meet you now, well, sort of in person.
So I am very interested in what is a shamanic sound, a shamanic flute journey, and how do you create that?
Thank you, Christine, for that question. I'm careful with the word shamanic because it's kind of a loaded word, and there's a lot of consideration around cultural appropriation. And of course, there's shamans in every tradition around the planet, all the way in Eastern Europe and Africa and South America and the Native Americans and all through the East. So the shamanic tradition goes way back, and the way I perceive it is like it's basically like a deep meditation. It's a deep entrainment. It's a way to access the more subtler energies of life. So the flute is all about the breath, and most yogic practices really involve the breath. And yogis and shamans and mystics always use the breath to center themselves or to awaken or activate some energies and powers. And so to me, just breathing through the flute, just the that sound alone creates an entrainment. And over time, if people drop into that, then, you know, you can call it a sound healing journey or a shamanic journey or an entrainment or a healing meditation. They're all closely related in my experience.
Beautiful. And I'm very interested to know from your perspective, what internal qualities have you developed? I mean, you're a very amazing musician. You have 18 albums. And what tips can you give us as to being the one to deliver that? I mean, how do you prepare? What do you do to create that space?
Well, it's basically creating a sacred container. Like you approach it ceremonially or ritualistically whenever you go anywhere, just like we began today with a moment of silence. For me, I love Tito's quote, "Silence is the mother of all sound." So I always start with silence and sitting with an idea, because often I'll get ideas just in daily life. I'll hear a sound, and then a whole concept will come to me, a whole sound world will emerge from that sound. And then I will sit with that sound and say, well, what else is in that sound? What else wants to wrap around that sound? What wants to contain that sound, hold it up, support it? And so each album that I create has a different theme and usually different color theme, different pictorial images, or a different intention. I keep them, I really have worked over the years to make each album a sonorous, cohesive body of work. Like a novel, you wouldn't have a novel starting here and ending there, right? It would be like, what happened? How did we get there? So I like to keep, once I get a concept, and then I'll bring my musical brain in. And then I'll say, okay, well, what kind of modes does it want to use? What keys does it want to play? What instruments work with that sound? And then it's a process of combining and just going through my orchestra and being with the orchestra, and the instruments speak to me which ones belong together and what kind of vibe you can create with that. And then the discipline is to stay with that concept from beginning to end, because I find myself, I drift, and many people drift. Once you have an idea, so many more ideas come that we often drift away from the original concept and we lose the continuity. So the discipline is staying with one concept, and if 6 other concepts come in, you put them on the back burner for future projects.
Beautiful. Great tips. So I'm curious, in your experience of 50 years, that's a long time of being involved early on in the sound healing movement. How do you think sound healing works?
I have thought about this a lot, and it mystifies me in some ways. And then once in a while, it makes sense in little ways. Like, I think at this point, I feel like that with all the principles of sound healing, whether it's entrainment or cymatics or harmonics or overtones, all these different concepts, resonance is one of the most important ones. There's a certain resonance that happens when we play sounds that are in tune with nature. Around us, there are many sounds, and they create the soundscape of our life. If you listen to the sounds of nature, there is patterns and principles that repeat and show up consistently, like the overtone series with a certain series of notes or certain rhythmic patterns. And when we listen to nature and study nature and emulate nature in our sounds that we make, our bodies resonate with that very deeply, and we relax. And in my experience, healing really comes from relaxation. And relaxation is an important element, whether it's anti-stress or anti-worry or, anti-inflammation, all the different things that cause us to feel bad. If we can harmonize the body and resonate with the patterns of nature and with our breath, it's like the wind, or it's like the ocean waves, which never cease. They just continually go. And when you emulate that and you entrain that in a sound healing journey, you're helping people drop into that natural space, and the body heals itself. It's not the music or the plants that heal the body. It's the body healing itself with assistance. So that's at least one of my theories. I've been through many different theories thinking about that very question.
And in your experience, living in Mount Shasta, how do you personally cultivate that connection to the natural world, that you can bring that into the sound healing programs?
I've been practicing wherever I live for the last few decades. It really doesn't matter where I am. I've been living in Mount Shasta off and on over the years. I'm back here now. I have lived in many beautiful places around the planet, and wherever I am, I make sure I have time in nature. And in the last few years, I've grown more and more deeply committed to listening to nature on a deeper level. I've always been inspired by nature, just naturally, as a kid and as a professional wilderness guide for many years and a backpacker and just being in nature. But when I started to relate that to music, I intentionally listen now to the waves of the ocean, to the crickets, to the frogs, to the wind, to the cicadas, to the freeway. And there's just endless melodies in those sounds. And so now when I play, I have my musical training and I have my natural inspiration, and those two combined, I feel like create that inspiration for me to keep going.
Thank you. Didn't know you had that background as a guide and a backpacker. And what instrument can you take when you're out in the nature? I'm curious at what fits in your backpack when you're out in the wild.
Okay, I usually have shakers, ocarinas, little whistles, and kalimbas.
And so in case people don't know, what is ocarina and kalimbas?
Okay, ocarina and kalimba, which I played on Stillwater Canyon, was an example of being in nature on the Green River for 8 days and recording in the canyon. I had an ocarina, which is it's a clay flute. It's a clay flute. And then kalimba is the African thumb piano, and there's many versions of that. And I have a couple of those that fit in my backpack or in my bag. And then, of course, shakers are always accessible, and then various whistles. And then, of course, once you're out there, you can find sticks and rocks and all kinds of, you record the water for a drone. You know, there's all kinds of ways to incorporate nature with it. So, and if I'm really just on a day hike, I can bring my guitar, my charango, my ukulele. You can there's a lot of portable instruments. In fact, I started the flute because it was portable. I was a trumpet player and a piano player for years, and I just wanted to travel. And so I picked up a flute, and it started to go in a harmonica, and they were with me everywhere, because when you're hitchhiking, sometimes you're on the side of the road for 4 or 5 hours, and you get a lot of practicing.
Probably helps you get a ride, too.
Perhaps.
I know you want to offer us some experience today live in this moment to have you guide us with the flute. I do have one question I'm very interested to know from all you've shared today for our audiences. What is it you're personally doing with sound for your personal practice? Maybe that's a tip we can learn from you. What's a tip that you do? Besides backpacking with our instruments.
Yeah. Well, I definitely do a lot of breath work. I really, and toning, because that resonates your body. Just any kind of tone, whether it's an om or an ah or a sigh or breathe in through the nose and a silent om. I pretty much do that all day long. So wherever I am.
That whole sequence again, I wanted to follow you, and I've never heard the silent om. Beautiful.
Yeah, so it's like the ujjayi breath. With proper diaphragmatic breathing, of course. That's all part of it. And sometimes I just go blah, 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 relaxing, and I just like do that kind of a Balinese thing that the Balinese dancers do, So I awaken the sounds in my body, and I imitate nature. If I'm out and I hear a bird sing, I copy it. I sing it back. I whistle it back. If it goes, then I go. So I'm always practicing what nature is singing to me. That's 2 things I do. There's a few others, but that's a good start.
Great. Thank you.
It's a full-time practice.
Well, we're excited to have an experience with you now. If you'd like to share the music of your soul with us in our own shamanic experience with your beautiful music today.
Okay. Well, we'll begin with just a brief moment of silence and let the sound be born as it will.
Thank you so much. That was an incredible flow. Is everything improvised that you're doing right now?
Everything's improvised within inside of a musical context, like jazz in a way, right? I mean, there's a framework of certain elements that I know work together, and then within that framework, I'm free to do, whatever comes through in that moment. In fact, all my albums are made that way, actually.
Wow. Thank you for that incredible experience. I've noticed my own breathing more deep, relaxed, even on this interview. And I was really curious about the flutes you choose and why. I mean, I've listened to you play, I think, the silver flute, the pan flute. Today you played a flute I don't know the name of. So I'd just like to know more about the flute as that tool. What is it about the flute?
They're all, and it's kind of like eating, you get up every day and you say, well, should I have oatmeal? Should I have eggs? Should I have pancakes? Should I have cold cereal? Or should I just fast? Or should I just have a green smoothie? How many choices every day? So flutes are like that. It's like I pretty much, I just pause and I wait till the flutes talk to me and they tell me which one wants to play in that particular set, in that particular performance. Like last night I was out by the creek and sitting, and all of a sudden I was just sitting there and the whole flow just came in. It was like, oh, I want the D minor ocarina, the D minor native. Oh yeah, I want the bell with the quill fan, because that's both in C. And I went, and I just kind of the whole thing all went in with the crystal chimes. I don't play them very much. And it's just kind of this, like, it's a spontaneous thing, and then you capture it like a photograph. And then as fast as I can, I write it down, and then I refine it over the next however long it takes to get the instruments and check in with them. And sometimes they say, no, I don't want to play today, so I have to choose another instrument. And probably one you didn't know was the quena. It's the, Tita La Rosa's son, Oma La Rosa, makes these flutes. It's a bamboo, like a shakuhachi. It's very much like a shakuhachi, but it's a little bit different in its structure, but the notes are the same. The pentatonic scale, which is one of the sound healing principles, is the pentatonic scale. It's a universal scale around the world in all folk musics of the world and all healers and most of all the icaros that all the shamans use are mostly all in pentatonic scale. There's something about that scale that's comforting, it's relaxing, it's easy to listen to, it's easy to practice, and it's just a natural phenomenon in nature. Again, we come back to the phenomenon of nature, emulating the rhythms in nature, and allow us to align with our natural flow, and, we're in tune. And when we're in tune, things just work better, just like your car. When your car's tuned up, it just works better. So with breath and sound and good food and silence of nature, I stay tuned up.
And tell me about the pan. You played also the pan flute and something else, maybe.
Well, this is the big pan. I love this one. This is gifted to me a long time ago. It's basically reeds or canes or bamboo, right? And they just hollow bamboo. I am a hollow bamboo. Our body's like a hollow bamboo, right? And the breath activates us. This is a hollow bamboo, and then there's this baby pan that's made out of feather quills. And of course, sometimes I use drums. I love using drums. I have a couple big drums, but I decided for this short presentation I would just focus on the flute because of time constraints.
What was the first flute you learned?
The silver flute.
Uh-huh.
I was in high school, been playing the trumpet for 8 years, and then one summer I don't know what it was. I just had to get a flute, and one of my friends in the orchestra, a woman who played flute, was getting a new flute, and I remember she sold me her old flute for $5. And so I used to just carry it with me everywhere and blow on it. I already knew the breath from the trumpet, but I had to learn the embouchure. And then I started getting serious and studying with flute players, and studied with classical symphony players and jazz players, and studied with Paul Horn for a while. He's an amazing flautist. And I just really got into the silver flute for years. Played in orchestras, played in bands, and rock and roll and the whole thing. And then it kind of I started discovering Tibetan bells and playing with Tibetan bowls instead of guitars and bass and drums, and it was a whole different thing. And so I started, then all of a sudden the esoteric instruments coming in, the native flute and the shakuhachi and the ocarinas and the whistles and all that stuff. It's like, wow, that really works well with the Tibetan bowls, because the tuning is a little bit expansive. The tunings in bowls, they kind of change a little bit they kind of depending on the mood. So I really, the silver flute is definitely my kind of my home base. But even when I was in college studying the silver flute classically in jazz and pop, I was listening to shakuhachi music and trying to copy the sounds of the shakuhachi on my silver flute. And I spent many hours working on that. And the whistle stop and just the subtle little tones that you can get out of it that just awaken this kind of dreamlike place. And then when you drop into that place, the flute takes a whole other dimension, right?
Are we going to get to hear any of that today?
Well, I just happen to have my silver flute right here. And it's definitely been a really good friend for a long time. And I would say it's been my companion for many years. So I'll give a few different sound worlds on the flute, on the silver flute that you can do. That's what I love about it. It's very versatile. It always starts with the breath.
Really beautiful. I feel like you're teaching through the flute just as much as I would talk. You're speaking in a language of that blend of shakuhachi and a silver classical flute. I can really hear that.
Yeah, I've been working on that for a long time, and of course, shakuhachi is, you don't mess around. That's like a serious instrument. I mean, I know some shakuhachi players, and they're quite serious about their, it's very it's like incredibly deep and profound and difficult, very difficult. You need to practice years to accomplish the sounds that they do on that thing. It's quite, so I've done my remix hybrid, which most sound healers I know have quite a mix of traditions in their bag of tricks. It's quite a mix of all around the world. Crystal bowls and African instruments and shamanic South American instruments and Tibetan instruments and whatever. It's like incredible mix. And the art, of course, is to blend them tastefully and to respectfully honor the traditions they come from. But there's definitely a similarity of principles that they all use. I mean, throat singing, overtone singing. I mean, there's the overtone series right there, right? And they show up in every instrument, but in the human voice, it's quite profound. So I just basically do what I can do, and I keep playing, and I follow my heart and do it as much as I can. I learn whenever I can learn from somebody something. Right now I'm working on the harmonica. I've learned a new harmonica technique, which is in development. So that's down the road to be more revealed.
Great. Well, the breath.
Breath. It's always the breath. It's always the breath, isn't it?
Yes. Thank you for this great session today. And I would like to end with maybe an interesting question, which would be, maybe I'll ask you on my flute, and you can answer on your flute. I'm in the key of A.
Okay, well, I happen to have an A right here.
All right, well, let's have a Q&A. I mean, just have a ending question without words. If we can sort of step into the field of all music and sound, I'll ask my question and you can answer. Good conversation.
I did want to mention my special offer if I could.
Yes, I just was going to ask you about that. Tell us about what you have to offer.
Well, I do. My Deep Dream album is like a dream come true, really. I worked on this album for 30 years, been thinking about it, been 10 years planning it, about 3 years recording it, and I had all the sound healing principles. I kept trying to get it all into one album, and I finally feel like I did it. So I think there's going to be a button on the Shift Network page, where my session page, and there'll be a button to download the Deep Dream album as a gift from me.
Oh, wonderful. I'm excited to hear that. And you recorded it all in 432. Why is that?
Well, I was experimenting. Tuning systems have all been all over the map over the centuries. Back 432 is kind of a popular one right now because of a lot of the mathematics line up in terms of frequencies and harmonization. And I find from my experience, it is fun to play a little bit low. It's a little bit more relaxed. All the flutes are a little bit, they're 8 cents. 432 instead of 440, for those of you who don't know, just means it's 8 cents flat, which is a very minute amount, but enough to hear. And it just makes everything more relaxed. I mean, way back in the Renaissance, they were tuning at 418, and all the cellos were like, it makes the strings looser, so they're more resonant. And then there's 444, which some European orchestras use to make it bright and really like bright and taut. And so the higher the tuning, the tighter the strings, the more brittle and bright and powerful it is. Whereas if they're more lower and relaxed, you get kind of so in some sense, the 432 was an experiment. It's difficult because hardly anybody plays in 432, and the bass player came in and she had to oh my God, it was like trying to get in tune with the bass was quite something. And all the flutes had to be relaxed and all the synthesizers have to be programmed, differently. It's quite a process, but I felt like it was just time to experiment with that tuning system.
Beautiful. And you can get that download at the URL, which is soundhealinglobalsummit.com/Bodhi, which is BODHI. So just go to the soundhealingglobalsummit.com/Bodhi, BODHI, and we can experience your beautiful album. What a great gift, which is how many songs? I was just reading about it.
9 tracks.
9 tracks.
It takes us a real journey. It's a real epic, it's a real sound healing journey.
I guess that's my final thought. If you have anything you want to leave the community with, like if I download your music, what's the tip you have for me? Should I, is there a specific tip you have for how we receive that music?
It's take the time to listen to it, create a space to actually lay down. In fact, one thing you can do is actually, it's very useful if people have trouble sleeping to put it on at night. And if you don't get to the end of the album, then it worked.
And I saw that you put headphones recommended, which
headphones are if you want to get the binaural beat experience, and all the subtleties of the, all the little things that producers put into their music that you don't hear over your iPod or your phone. You won't hear a lot of the little subtle little nuance. So it's sort of a connoisseur way to experience the music. If you have time to just, some kind of journey, lay down and just relax for an hour and really take the journey and enjoy the feeling and tone in your body of deep relaxation and sonic healing, sonic vibrational healing.
Beautiful. Thank you so very much for being with us today, Bodhi. And just reminding people, your website is
soundscapeoasis.com.
Great. Thank you so much, and everyone, for being part of this session in the Sound Healing Summit.
Thank you so much, Christine.
Ashe, aho.
Aho. Blessings. Beautiful. Thank you so much.